Hey guys, it's Ben with Practical Junk again, and guess what? Today I'm gonna make some food containment boxes to go around my feeders. Now, I want to show you what they look like, and then we're gonna show you how I made them.
All right, the first ones I made were out of wood. I have some 1/2 inch sheet of PVC, and I've ripped that down. And my first stage, this is just 3/4 inch high. Now this is my temporary one. This is like the first day. I kind of made it and realized, man, 3/4, I'm only going to use this one for a day. Then this is exactly 1.5 inches tall here. And then here I put a 45, and it's just a little bit taller. Why did I 45 this and make this side flat? It's going to go in the corner of my brooder. And as they're kicking feet up, I need it to come back down into my food containment box. Now you notice 3/4, 1.5 inches. Then we've got 2.25. And I did the same exact thing. I've got this little bit of a rough angle on it. And if I flipped it over, I'd have a rough angle. But I've got the same angle right here. And this is my stage 3. It's 2.25. And basically at 2.25 inches high, they can't really kick any food out of this. Now I made 3 stages. I did this because most people have one of these style feeders. Even in my food waste experiment, I went through all 3. I'm going to be doing all 3 stages of this in my food waste experiment number 3. I just did 2 using all these. Now you can see here, the feeder fits dead center. They get in here, they're knocking the food out. It stays inside the box. And guess what? Since they can't kick it all over the place, they're going to keep it in this confined area, and they're going to eat it off the ground. That is the idea. Now I'm going to show you how I made it, because I've already put these to use and they work amazingly. Now at the end of the video, I'm going to go over what days to use these, how long to use them, and we're going to go over some of the details of the use.
All right, I have got this stuff ripped down, and now let me show you kind of some things I've tweaked and see if it's going to benefit and help this design out.
Right, so what I've done, I've given them right at about 2.5 inches all the way around. And I did this in case I've got maybe 60 or 70 birds in a pen. It gives them room to, mob both of these feeders essentially. But it gives them plenty of space if they're kicking out. These guys, I noticed they like to get in here and snuggle and sleep as well. They would snuggle up to the walls. Now what I've done here is on this one, I basically doubled this, just stacked it. So I made a single one right here. That way my little chicks, I'm gonna put this in there tomorrow, they can climb over this. This is only right at about 3/4. They can climb over it just fine, but it helps hold the food in. And if you watch my video I made for chick food waste, this little trick helped me out quite a bit. But now here's where we've done just a little bit of an upgrade. This is about 1.5 inches tall, and I'll put this in here probably right at about a week, if not a little bit earlier, depending on how good I see them going. But I angled this just a little bit because this section and this section are going to be in the corner in my brooder. So that angle is the idea that it's when they kick the feed, it hits the wall, it's going to come down here and roll back into the box. Because I did notice some of the feed was getting over it, and it was like laying on top of this a lot. And I found a bunch kind of around the trays. So I'm hoping that's going to help contain this feed a little bit. Now I'm going to take some stainless screws, and I'm going to screw all this together, 2 on this piece and just 1 on these. And I am going to use some clear glue and clean it up. But before I do that, I'm going to wet sand all this down with 2000 grit sandpaper, get it really smooth. That way, right here where I cut it, it's not porous. If any feed does come up here, it will go back inside this little box. So you know what, got to try different things, different ideas. But when I was making this feeder, when I made this insert, which I've got a video on, check it out, I wet sanded that insert and it made the feeds flow so much better. I'm hoping it's going to do the same thing here and make it easier to clean in the future. But let's get some wet sanding done and do some assembly. All right, so I've wet sanded these pieces. They're nice and smooth. There was a little bit of work, but it's going to be worth it. It'll be easier to clean, and the food and poo will not stick so easily. So now I've got to pre-drill everything. We're going to glue these together, let them set up overnight, because we're going to put these to use tomorrow. All right, we got everything glued and screwed together. You seen me countersinking, but also I double screwed this one and I countersunk the screws with another bit so they'd be good and flush. And the next test is how square is it? Oh, that's pretty good. And how level is it? Oh yeah, we're good. She's nice and level. Everything's sitting nice and flush, which means it will inside the coop. So let's see how good this one turned out. Well, we got a little bit off there. Let's see how this corner's looking. So we got just a little bit off on those two corners, but you know what? If I take it and I press this corner in there, yeah, that one's just a hair off. But that's all right. We're gonna still make that work. What I'll do is I'm gonna clamp this piece down overnight, and what I'll do is I'll put it in this to square it up. I'll clamp it down, and when it dries tomorrow, it'll hold it good and square. But everything's sitting nice and flush. But I want that good and square to put in that corner. But that's gonna be an easy fix. I don't know why it's off, but hey, we'll still be able to use it. Well, I'm fixing to have to go modify these real quick. I need to shorten these down so it just barely covers the edge of this paper towel. Oopsie. Yeah, I tried to make them square. And yep, got to take that in consideration. I need this sitting over this paper towel perfect. So I'm going to have to go trim this down and modify it. And that's okay, because I'm not going to use these for the first 24 hours. I was doing a test fitting and realized it, so we're gonna have to get that corrected, because I was gonna start using these tomorrow, but that's okay. Got just enough time to get it fixed. Let me show you where I goofed up when I built this little box. I wanted to make it square all the way around, and I forgot something when I built my first ones. This has to come and cover the edge of this paper towel. Not they'll kick it over it and food will get under here. So I made this too big, is what I've done. This was my original one. I should have went right off the measurements. And you can see I made this one considerably too big. Now, as far as the actual length, this way it would probably be all right. But the length from here to here is not. It has to be able to cover these paper towels. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut this down, and I'm gonna make it match the measurements on this one for my paper towels. Now, what it is you can see here, I've got this big gap. That's okay, I can cut the paper towel a little bit longer, but what I can't do is stretch it out this way. So I've got to take at least about 5/8 off of this side to pull it in to make sure that the paper towel's covered. Because what happened to me the first time I did this, they were kicking feed. The feed would get under the paper towels and they wouldn't be able to eat it. Which I've already trimmed this one down. I just got to screw it back together. As you can see here, it covers the edges, and I can cut the paper towel to length here. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave the towels I have down in my brooder. Then I'm going to cut a towel to fit over underneath this one just perfectly. It's an extra layer is what I intend on doing, like I did the first time. Now, want to give you guys some exact measurements on this, depending on the blue towels that you use, or if you're going to use any at all. But what I've done, basically, I've made a box on the outside. It's right at 11 1/4. And then I've got it right at 11 3/4. I did that the first time to give me just a little bit more space. And then the inside dimensions, it was right at, it's 9 7/8 by 10 1/2. And that's perfect for this little Baby Farms green feeder. But again, it's not so much the feeder as it is the paper towels that it's going to be laying over, because we want this secure going over the paper towel in the corner and the top right here. You see that? You want it to be able to cover it fully. And again, I'm going to cut the paper towel the same length over, and this is going to work much better than what I've done here. I made a mistake and just made these too big to match the actual feeder size versus the paper towel size. And again, the paper towel needs to fit around this all the way around the corners. It's got to cover it so there's no cracks they can kick food under. But let's get this one redone, get everything glued together, and we're going to try this again. I was thinking when I came to this one, because this is the next level up, it's double the height. I made it the same height as the paper towels. That way it would cover right here. But I still left it a little bit longer this way. That way they're going to have a little bit more room. I do believe I left this one right at about, what was it? Yeah, about 11 1/4 inches on the inside. And the heights, again, it's only going to be right at about 10 inches. So, didn't fully cut this one down. I wanted to leave that little bit of extra room, but I needed it to cover these paper towels well. I don't have it screwed together yet, but as you can see, it's just right up to the edge of them. So, didn't fully cut it down. I just chopped that little bit of height down to make sure this paper towel would fit in it. I got my little dustpan. I've cleaned up all the food from Chick Day, where I just put food on the ground. I'm going to go ahead and double up and raise this. I've got my new box built correctly. And now we're going to get this centered. I'm going to top off this feeder, and we're going to see how these guys do with this. And you can see right here with that raised up right at about 1 1/4 inch, they can reach that food just fine. You know, they're just tall enough to get up there to it. You know, so raising a feeder is paramount to keeping them out of it and to keep the food waste down. But I wanted them to learn the first 24 hours where the food was, how to get to it, let them eat, let them get their stability and their legs under them, which they're right at about 2.5 days old now, but they can reach up there just fine. It's the perfect height for them. Let's get this topped off, and now we're going to manage and keep an eye out and see how much food waste we have. And as you can see, raising that box up, you know, doubling the height on that, they can crawl over it just fine at this age. So they're doing really well with that. I mean, even the younger chick, which that's a baby chick, he crawled right over it. I mean, he's only 2 days old. And that kind of makes me wonder, the next hatch, I might just go ahead and implement this after maybe a day. Once I know their legs are under them good, I might just go ahead and put the taller food retaining box around it. And see, that's a baby right there. He just crawled over that no problem at all. I made these pieces about 1/2 inch bigger. I'm gonna cut them down close to the length that I need them. Then I'm gonna run them back to the table saw, run it through it, and get nice straight edges and clean it up.
This stuff is so flimsy, it's not like wood. As you can see when we cutting it, it's got a little bit of bow, and it's really hard to cut a good straight line. It just moves around too much because of the flexibility in it. But cut these strips down into close to the lengths, then we're gonna run it back through in smaller pieces. Now you just seen me rerun everything to the table saw to make sure everything's nice and smooth. The ends could be a little bit off. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make sure everything's nice and squared up again. We're gonna as you can see right here, basically what I did is I did 2 insides, but with the 45 in this corner, I had to do the length of the inside edge. And then the same thing here, since this is gonna be on the outside with the screws coming in, I had to measure the inside edge where the 45 is. And basically that's gonna give me a perfect box. So I've gotta go do a lot of wet sanding again. All right, something to think about. You can see here, I just ran the screws here and here. This is gonna be the wall of my brooder, and this is gonna be a wall of my brooder. So what I wanna do is I wanna put the screws here, put the screws here, put the screws here. That way, most of the screws are gonna be going to the outside of the brooder. That way, it just won't be getting funky, cleaning out screw holes. Unfortunately, I am gonna have to put some right here. But because of my heat lamp placement, my heat lamp's gonna be on this side. I wanna put the screws coming in on this side because they're gonna be doing both their gathering over here. So it's silly stuff like that I think about, but I don't want them like taking out the screws. I don't want to get the screws filled. You know, I can put screws here, here, and here, but when poo gets in them, it's gonna be more cleaning. So I wanna put them as to the least accessible areas that the birds have, so they're not gonna put poo in the screw holes. It's silly, but the point of this is to make something that's easier to clean, and that's how we want to design. Though, because the one I had in here before, the 1.5-inch one, I want to start that on like day 2 or 1, and then I'll probably put this in here on like day 5 or 6 because they can hop over it just fine. And I want to make sure that there's no waste getting kicked out from this container. And I do believe this little, food containment box is going to work out really well, and I don't think I'll have to make one any taller than this. So, as you've seen, I'm using blue towels in the bottom of my brooder. Now, this is just particularly what I like to use. I have 1/2-inch wire mesh under it. It helps dry the poo, but a lot of people like to use deep litter, and not everybody has a good flat bottom on their base. So here's just a couple ideas you could do. You could cut a piece of plywood and put under it, or you could get like a rubber mat and put down under this and build something similar that will help contain the food. Now, there's something I learned in my food waste experiment, which I'm going to share with you right now. The 3/4 inch, the shorter one, that's only a 3/4 inches high, that's only going to be good the first 3 days. Now, when I say 3 days, I mean 3 days in your brooder, not hatch day. I leave my chicks, and this is very important, I leave my chicks in there 24 to 36 hours. I want to make sure they have their legs under them good, and they have the strength to be able to crawl over this. This is also effective in many other aspects of putting them in the brooder. Do not remove your chicks as soon as they hatch. Trust me, they're going to be just fine. But going back, 3/4 inch height, they do fine with it. Now, day 3 in the brooder, I'm going to use 1.5 inches. Day 3. You're probably going, day 3? They can't crawl over that? Oh, yes, they can. And technically, they're going to be 4 to 5 days old. So then they can get over that perfectly fine. I learned that in my, food waste experiment too. I had 3 or 4 chicks hatch late, and I put them in there. Man, they could crawl over that perfectly fine. So I'm going to implement that in my food waste experiment number 3. Then I've got my 2.25. Raise it 2.25 high box. That's going to go in there day 10. It's day 10 in the brooder. They'll be 11 to 12 days old. Now, there's something which, man, I learned quite a bit. And I can't believe how simple as something as a box around your feeder, how much food waste that can save you. Now, it has to be on something flat. That way they can't kick food around the edges. But I tell you what, huge, huge food savings. Now, I do have a 3-stage system, which I'm going to go over in another video. And I also have a feeder I've modified considerably to cut food waste. And I made some risers, essentially, kind of like pedestals to raise my water and feeder. So check those videos out. Now, me personally, just going back, this 2.25 box, I won't be using that long because I have a pipe feeder. Right around 10 to 12 days old, I made a 2-inch pipe feeder. I won't be using this style feeder very long. Even though I like it, it was effective. In my food waste video too, I used it all the way to 14 days just to see how effective the feeder was and how effective these food containment boxes were. And they worked phenomenally. And since I know a lot of people have these style of feeders, it is going to cut your food waste back for your chicks a considerable amount. But check out my food waste video, check out my modified feeder video, and guess what? Check out how I made my little platforms to raise my feeders and my waterers for baby quail. Guys, thank you for watching the video. Hopefully this gives you an idea to make something similar to help you cut your food costs back for your baby quail because they are very wasteful. Have a great day. Like, subscribe, and check out my other videos to go along with this.